Hey, Granny Gear here. It's Tech Tuesday. And on this Tech Tuesday, we'll be talking about how much Trek Bikes loves blenders. Well, maybe not blenders, not like margarita blenders, although they may like those too. It's possible. No, I'm talking about blender, which is a funky spelling of the word, and it's their way of organizing your little bits and bobs like computers and safety lights and safety lights and fenders and now even saddlebags onto your bike in a neat and organized fashion. Because you know what? Bar space, saddle space, all that gets a little cramped, doesn't it? Well, Blendr does help solve that with one caveat, perhaps. Let's take a look at the Trek Blendr blender system. This little tiny cube of bright red flashing goodness, oh man, I just blinded myself, is what I use pretty much on every ride if I'm going to be where there's going to be any traffic. I'm going to turn this away from you so I don't kill you with your retinal blaze here. This little safety light and a front one that I use is a Trek Blendr product. And I'll be doing my own video, I think, on these. I'll do a keeper video because these things are just freaking awesome. Okay, they really are. I use these all the time, Mrs. Granny Gear and I. I'm going to turn it off. The trick can be sometimes with little bits and pieces like that is getting them mounted on your bike cleanly, because what if you have a bar bag and it's in the way, or you know, on the rear of your bike maybe your seat post has got a funky shape, this doesn't really fit, or you just got some reason where a computer mount is difficult and whatnot. Well, Trek has what they call their blender system, and Blendr is their way of integrating this little standard clicky slide in kind of mount that's built into this light. And they have it for the front stem, so I could add that to a certain Trek Blendr stem. I could add the little blender mount, and I could clip a light on the front, I could clip a computer on the front, I could clip a computer and a light on the front, and they also have it for the rear of the bike affixed to the rear of a saddle. And there you could put a rear tail light, such as this one, on there, and you could put a fender on there, and you could put a little saddlebag on there, all living happily under your saddle with the blender system. Now I'm going to show you not necessarily the front. I don't have a front setup, but I do have a rear setup they sent me in real quick. I'm just going to run through kind of how it works, and then we'll talk about if there are downsides to it, what there might be. Here you go. Now it seems reasonable I'd use a Trek bike for this, and this is Mrs. Granny Gear's much beloved Domani. That was a Project 1. I don't know, so is it an SLR? I can't really remember. This was her first serious road bike. It's a peach. And it seems reasonable to talk about Trek stuff on a Trek bike. So here is the blender system in action. Now this is a Trek or Blendr Verse Elite saddle, and you can see here on the back underneath there's a little bit of something going on that wouldn't normally be on the saddle. That is the blender mount, and that interfaces with the little cube light that I showed you earlier. And for instance, I can do this. You can take our little cube flashy light, and with no strap, no fuss, no muss, put that right on there, and it is mounted safe and secure, pointing in a reasonably good angle to be seen from behind. And to release it is simple. It's kind of hard to do with one hand, but you push this little lever out and it slides to the side. I didn't actually lock it in, but it clicks in. So there is that. So that is the blender system, and you'll see this little interface here, this little sliding notch with the little release lever. That is common throughout the whole blender system. Now normally what I would have with this light would be this. It would be a little rubber strap, the ubiquitous rubber strap that'll go around every bike, and you can see the rear taillight is angled, so it makes up for the angle of your seat post, and so you get this thing pointed down the road in the right way. So this is what you would do if you didn't have a blender system on your bike, but this little strap comes right off like so, and now with the right equipment I can click my light directly to my saddle, which I have to say is really pretty slick. Because have you ever seen anybody with a safety tail light? Now, I'm a big advocate of a daytime safety light. And they'll take it and they'll attach it here, like on the seat stay. So unless somebody's right behind you with an 18-wheeler, that light is not focused downstream, if you will, to the driver's eyes. And the LEDs are very directional. So unless you're looking right on the lens, if you're looking off center, you're reducing the brightness to the point where you might not even have it on there, unless maybe at night. But in the daytime, yeah, not good. So at least this keeps it from slipping around, getting it out of place, getting in the way of your saddlebag, especially if you have not very much seat post extension, like maybe the frame's a little big for you have short legs or whatever. It can get kind of complicated to put a light here. And on this bike, you know, the frame, the clamp, the post, it's all kind of competing for space. And this solves that and gets your light up where it belongs, and it can do the most good. And that is what you want, because if you're going to put it on there, let's get it working for you the best it can. Well, let's just say your ride calls for a little bit of a rear fender day. Maybe it's been raining, it's muddy, it's slushy out there. You know, they call them ass savers, you know, to coin a phrase. Just enough to keep the spray from hitting you. And you'd like to put that on your bike. Well, you know, that can be a bit of a faff, trying to tuck those folding plastic things. Sometimes those things get under your saddle and you got to take your bag off. They're kind of cool, but they're all kind of a pain. What if you could just snap it on there? Hey, how about Blendr? And just like that, with the Blendr system, you got a little fender for the day. It's just a little flexible fender. Yeah, it's not going to keep you dry in a giant rainstorm, but it'd be enough for your commute or for your quick ride. And when you're done with it and you don't want it on there, you don't need it. If I can do this with one hand, which is not all that easy to do. There you go. Bada boom, bada bing. It's off of there. But what if we'd like to have a light and a fender? You may notice the other little clicky part. It's kind of hard to see because it's all black, but check this out. There's our light right on the fender. Now I've got both because the Blendr system is allowing me to just stack those two together, which I have to say is pretty cool. Now this particular saddle, this Bontrager saddle, this happened to come with the little Blendr mount on it. But they have a line of saddles with the mount capable. There's a little pre-drilled hole here. And if you get the Blendr kit that was sent to me, it comes with this a little bit more deluxe bracket that allows you to attach not only a light or a fender and whatnot, but also a saddlebag like this. So you can see that clicked into the Blendr mount, sitting up nice and tucked in. And there is a little rubber strap that would go around your seat post, right, in a typical fashion. I'm not going to go ahead and fasten that, but you get the idea. And here is the little mount still for the light, which I can grab and put right on the Blendr mount, maybe. There we go. Just like that. Pretty cool, huh? And that's pretty clean. Now, I think in order to get anything out of your saddlebag, right, you would have to remove your light, but that's not a big deal. Take that off and put it in your pocket. See if I can do that with one hand. I didn't actually click it in, so okay. And fender. And there's the fender. And just like before, if we want to add the light, let's turn it on so you can see what we've got there. Now we have the whole enchilada, if you will. Saddlebag, fender, and light. Actually, I have to say, that is pretty slick. Nice going, Trek. So is there a downside to this, if any? Well, there kind of is, because with any integrated system where you need certain parts to make other certain parts work, well, if you don't use a Trek Blendr saddle, you don't have the Blendr mount on there. And saddles are very, very individual. So if you don't like their saddle because your butt says, I think I prefer Selle Italia or Ergon or whatever, it's a no-go for the Blendr mount, at least as far as I understand it. It'd be kind of cool if they could make one that attached to the seat rails, though. So there is one downside. Is there any other? Well, one thing I notice when I look at this, the fender, this bike is sitting on a stand, but it's actually fairly level to my eye, at least as far as how the wheels look, if they were going to be on the ground. And to me, the fender slightly intrudes on the light. I wish maybe the fender went down just a little bit. Maybe, I don't know how that would be from behind. Maybe it's not as bad as it looked, but kind of stood out to me a little bit. And that's the Blendr system from Trek Blendr. I think it's pretty cool. I don't think it answers all the questions because, like I said, integrated system, you need to start with parts that they make to bolt to the other parts that they make onto. Other than that, I think it's pretty cool. It's worth a look. Anyway, that was Tech Tuesday for you guys. Hope you're having a great week. And as always, go ride your bike.